Definitely relationships. I would say relationships are just very important, especially in a culture that values relationships so highly.
Welcome to Conversations, brought to you by It Is Written. I'm John Bradshaw, blessed to be joined by James and Nancy Crosby, mission workers on the Navajo Nation in the southwest of the United States. James and Nancy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so there's two of you. You're both mission workers, but I don't believe you do exactly the same thing as each other. Let's begin by finding out what you do. James, you are a pastor. What else?
Well, I believe I'm more than just a pastor. I do a lot of practical work as well there. We do have a focus on the agriculture program there.
Okay.
And then I also do Bible studies and whatever needs done really on the mission site, kind of make sure it happens.
And Nancy, your role?
So I'm the program and development director. So just thinking of programs that can be a benefit to the community and then raising the resources to back up those programs.
Okay, so you work among Native Americans, largely, primarily, solely. What are we talking about here? Your ministry is exclusively to Native Americans? Yeah,
Yes.
more or less?
Yes.
Okay, great. Navajo Nation. Tell me where, tell me how long. What do we need to know about the Navajo Nation?
So we started working among the Navajo people in 2014.
Okay.
2014, yes.
Navajo Nation, you can't be responsible for all of it. It's huge. It's bigger than West Virginia.
Yes, it is.
So where are you in relation to the rest of the place?
So we are in not quite the middle of the Navajo Nation, but we are in a remote location. We are 100 miles from the closest Walmart. Not saying you should shop at Walmart or Walmart is the ideal place to be, but to give you an idea of how far away we are from being able to buy clothing or, some of those things that we need, shoes.
I get the sense from what you're telling me that Walmart or not, there's not an awful lot between you and the Walmart.
Rattlesnakes, rocks, desert.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are in a remote place. You're gospel workers, you're church workers. This leads me to a question. How many others are there like you doing the work that you are doing on the Navajo Nation? Keeping in mind now, I looked it up, larger than West Virginia, a little smaller than South Carolina. And I think you told me, Nancy, about the size of Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire put together.
That's correct.
That's a big territory.
Yes, that is a very large territory. And within that territory, we have approximately 13 grocery stores. That's it.
Hang on a minute. 13 grocery stores for a place the size of South Carolina.
Exactly.
Huh.
Exactly.
All right. Okay, so there's not a lot of infrastructure. But having said that, you're in a desert, so it's not like you have the population of South Carolina.
Exactly. That is correct. The county that we are in is Navajo County, and it has one of the highest food insecurities in the entire United States.
I can imagine based on what you just said. Huh. Okay, we'll come back to that. I want to ask you, how many other gospel workers are there working side by side with you on the Navajo Nation?
So within our denomination, we have 5 other mission sites, which translates into 2 full-time pastors and 1 half-time pastor.
Hang on a minute. In addition to yourselves, there are 2 more.
No, counting my husband.
Oh.
So 2.5 total.
So in addition to yourself, so you're a worker, but we're not describing you as a pastor. There's you, 1 other, and half of one.
Yes.
For an area the size of bigger than West Virginia. Wow. Okay. I'm starting to understand this now. We're not over-resourced in terms of personnel. No one's dreaming that. All right. Describe life on the reservation, because we're going to talk about the people you work among, how you reach people for Christ in an area like that. what it's like to live there. You're a long way from, well, Walmart, as you said, and most other things. Just describe the reservation and life on it. If I were to drive on, what would I see? What would I experience? What would it feel like, sound like, smell like? What's it like out there?
Okay, it is a place that attracts a lot of people, and we do have a lot of tourism in the area. You've probably heard of Monument Valley. I'm sure many have. Both as a tourist place, but also because we used to have a former mission site there with a hospital. And so there's a lot of mission work that's been done up there. That mission site has closed, but transferring that down to Kayenta. But it's a beautiful place. So we're 20 miles south of Monument Valley.
And Monument Valley is on the reservation?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's for people who are unfamiliar with it, the broad expanse of what looks like desert, but then these incredible objects rising up out of the ground, monuments, I suppose.
Yes.
So you're not very far from there.
Yeah, and there's some of those all around us where we're at. So
okay.
we're kind of like, even though it's 20 miles up there, we're really on the edge of this Monument Valley, and we see some of these beautiful things like
That's pretty spectacular.
El Capitia and Owl Rock, and there's some other rocks.
Yeah.
Church Rock is, so these things are around us. So there's a sense this is a place that has beauty that people come to see. A lot of tourists are there. And we enjoy living there. It's a great place. Dry climate, plenty of sunshine.
When you say dry, how dry?
Dry. Just to give you an idea, a couple weeks ago I was visiting our daughter who lives about 100 miles away, but still in the same climate. And she says, "Mom, does it feel a little humid to you?" And we looked at each other and laughed because I think the humidity was like 23%.
Oh.
And that was a humid day.
Oh, that's enough to make your fingers crack in other parts of the country.
Exactly.
That's so dry.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
and we're going to talk in a moment about life as mission workers and as missionaries in that place and sharing the gospel. But before we get there, I just want you to explain a little more about what life is like. It's 100 miles from Walmart. How far is it to a McDonald's?
Well, yeah, there's one right there close.
Okay.
So we are in a town, and that town has a population, I think they say around 5,000 people. It's hard to say if there's that many people there because a lot of people do go to one of the larger towns to get work, so they may not be there all the time. But in that town, there are fast food restaurants, there's one grocery store, of course the post office, there's a hospital there, and there is a prison system there. So there's a good little community and a few housing areas.
So this is the town of, what town?
Kayenta.
Okay, Kayenta. All right. And if I was looking at a map, you'd say about 20 miles south of Monument Valley. Monument Valley is in Utah.
That's right.
So you are in
Arizona.
northern Arizona.
Yeah.
The far northern part of Arizona.
Yeah, north central.
Okay. You are ministering there. You're a pastor, and you're a pastoral couple. And Nancy, you said your duties vary, of course. Talk to me about the life of a local. What are people up against living in that area? It sounds like it's, from my perspective, living in East Tennessee, under-resourced. You mentioned there's a grocery store, a little town. What's life like? Are people working? Are people not working? Are people well? Are people sick? What are they doing with their spare time? What's life like there?
So people are not well. Our diabetes rate on the reservation is very high. It's
How high?
some of the highest in the world. 18 to 20% of people have diagnosed diabetes. And so that's a very high percentage. Our unemployment rate is about 48% on the reservation as a whole. And there isn't a lot to do on the reservation. Aside from employment, not being a lot of employment, there's also not a lot of other things to do. It's beautiful, the beauty, but it's a hard life there. We have a third of the reservation does not have running water or electricity. So on any given day, you can see people hauling a trailer with a water tank on it or in the back of their truck. So that takes up a significant amount of time to, for your basic needs. And if you think about how much water a tank can hold on the back of your truck, and then think of a shower or laundry, so how many loads that you need to go, and where is the nearest place that you can purchase that water, or there's a well that is offering free water. So that takes up a significant portion of time for people who have to haul their water.
Now, I want to make sure I speak in a way that connotes respect. I don't want to talk about people who live on a reservation as though they're circus performers or circus animals or so forth, but I do want to ask some predictable questions. How big a problem is alcohol?
It's a big problem there, yeah.
Significant.
Yeah.
We went from big to significant. I wonder where this is going to top out. How big, how significant?
We should, it is a dry nation. You can't legally purchase alcohol on the Navajo Nation, and yet it seems people know where to get it. It seems readily available.
Okay.
I probably shouldn't even say this, but just last week, a fellow rode into town on his bike. He had said he'd come from another town about 100 miles away, was just passing through, and he was there working on his bike. I gave him some tools. He was there for a while, and then he walked away while I wasn't close by, left his bike. He came back 2 hours later, and he was drunk. I'm just thinking, how'd this guy
On a dry nation.
find a bootlegger that quick? Nancy said, he lied to you. He's from this area, but I don't know. But anyways, it is readily available.
Okay, so
unfortunately,
alcohol is not permitted to be sold. There's
No.
lots of it, and it's a major problem.
it is, yeah.
Okay, predictably so. Native peoples all around the world, whether they're Native New Zealanders or Australians or Native Americans, historically have struggled with alcohol-related issues, and so no secret in the US that's very much the case. Okay, so you're there in this place, and it's big, and it's dry, and it's empty, and it's under-resourced, and half the people don't have work. 20% of the people have diabetes, diagnosed diabetes, so by the time you add an undiagnosed, that number goes through the roof. And you are there to minister spiritually. You're a pastor, you're a pastoral couple. You are a coordinator of Native American ministry work in basically the southwestern region of the entire United States. Okay, so where do you begin to share Jesus with people who are living in a situation so different from mine, they might as well be on the moon? Where do you start?
I think having a caring heart for the trials that they're going through, and showing that you care for them, which could be in a variety of ways. And I'll just start out with one ministry that I saw as a need, because think if you're pregnant and you're going to have a baby, and the closest place to buy baby clothes is at least 100 miles away. What will you do? So I had an idea to start a program called Mom and Me, where we offer a gift bag to new moms with diapers, wipes, and a new outfit for their baby, and also whatever, just, needs for a newborn baby. And sometimes it may be also a quilt tucked in. Sometimes we've had ladies from churches in other states that have sewing clubs and sew quilts and send a box to us. So sometimes we have a quilt to add for that baby. So that is one ministry that we have.
Baby clothes are 100 miles away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm getting a clearer picture here of the isolation people are experiencing. Before we forget, someone heard you say that and said, I'd love to do that. I'd love to help the work Nancy's doing. How can they help?
So if you are at a store and you see clearance baby items and you think, oh, that's so cute, but I don't know anyone having a baby. There's always someone having a baby on the Navajo Nation. Pick it up and send it our way.
And how do we do that? Is there an address?
Yes, we have an address. P.O. Box 1294, Kayenta, Arizona, 86033.
Kayenta, Kayenta, Arizona, and the zip code is, because someone's listening, not watching.
86033.
86033. That's a creative ministry. What's the response been to that ministry?
It has been very positive. I've overheard people say, she's the one who gives gifts to our children.
Nice.
And just to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And then when people see that you care for them in these tangible ways, I think that they can believe that you care about their spiritual life as well.
Mm-hmm. Some parts of the country, some parts of the world, you can roll into town, erect a pulpit, let people know you're going to be preaching from the Bible, and you draw a crowd of some size, and in some places a large crowd. More so years ago, but you understand what I'm saying now.
Right.
Let's say we did that in Kayenta or another part of the Navajo Nation. What's their response going to be?
Now, there are things like that you can do. So they do set up tents, and they call them revivals,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll run them for a week or two. And so a lot of the churches are doing that. In some of the churches, the more remote ones, further away from the main towns, that may be all they do in the year. So they may not have their church open all year long, but they may do a revival once or twice a year or something like that.
So what you're saying then is that there's an openness, there's a receptivity to the gospel.
There is, and seeing the tents up and put up a sign that says revival, you do get some response.
Okay.
And remember, too, that there isn't a lot of entertainment on the reservation.
Sure.
So this is something happening. So people, and I think people on the reservation, they do have a sense that they have a need. There is a lot of hopelessness, which translates to using alcohol. And so there is an openness of, I have a need. And so we do see people attend those events, and just an added cultural element. Usually at those revivals, there's a meal every single night.
Mm-hmm.
Coupled with the meetings, there's always a meal, because the Navajos do like to gather around food.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also a very family-oriented culture. So family connections are strong, I think. A lot of large families, and then of course the extended family is kind of all part of it, and it affects their life, how they live.
I haven't gone very far down this road with you, but I want to pause already and come back to something you said a moment ago, Nancy, and that is hopelessness. You see that where you live on the Navajo Nation?
Yes.
What does that look like?
I think it looks like we love our home here. We want to live here. But what is there for us? There's not the prospects of a job necessarily. Typically in times past, the Navajo were sheep herders. So, everyone could herd sheep, but that was and everybody does tend to have sheep in their family somewhere. If I don't have sheep, my auntie or my grandma, someone in the family has sheep. So that is a part of the culture as well, but that is not, as time has moved on, that's not a way that you can live by just sheep herding. And we do have sheep on our mission site.
Uh-huh.
We have 13 sheep.
Okay. Back to this hopelessness. Why are people hopeless? No job. You mentioned no job.
No job.
What else?
No hope of Jesus. No hope of the gospel. They haven't heard the gospel. I teach children in our children's class at church that have never heard about Jesus.
Never ever.
No. And when we talk about At the Christmas season, I was talking about how Jesus came as a baby, and he came as a baby to live and then die for our sins. And the children looked at me with blank faces. And I realized then, and at other events, that, wow, they have not heard of Jesus.
There's no frame of reference at all.
Exactly. No, many of them have no understanding of Bible stories or have not heard the Bible stories before.
Is suicide a thing on the Navajo Nation? I mean, of course it exists, but do we have bad statistics there?
Yes. Very high suicide rates, especially with teenagers.
Oh, indicating a lack of hope.
Exactly.
Some of that lack of hope comes from a lack of purpose,
Yes.
because I don't quite see where I'm going to go with my
Exactly.
life and so forth.
Exactly.
Okay, back to ministry, because what we know is when people are hopeless, Jesus came to give hope.
Exactly.
And so Christian believers have the antidote for that hopelessness issue. You mentioned already one ministry initiative God laid it on your heart to help new mothers or young mothers with little kids, and you're providing for some of their needs. James, where do you begin as a pastor when you get onto the Navajo Nation? What's the starting place, and what are some of the things that you have done to share Christ and bring hope to people's lives?
Yeah, I can't say I know what the starting place should be. I mean, when I went there, the first thing I did was Bible studies, because that's what I had done before. And there is definitely an openness to Bible studies. There's always people wanting to know more, people wanting to find out more. Is there something here that can benefit my life? And so there is an openness there. Another felt need is with agriculture. A lot of people are wanting to learn. I mean, they know their grandparents or maybe even parents used to grow their own food along in the canyons and in the washes, and they want to get back to that. There's been a lot of programs that are giving out free stuff, but the thought that maybe we can't always be dependent on this, and so agriculture is something we're doing there as well.
Nancy, you mentioned before food insecurity, and I think you guys said there's a dozen or 13 or 14 supermarkets in the entire place, and it's a very large place. So this would be a big deal if people can begin to produce their own food. First thought I had was, it's a desert, what's going to grow? So tell me, what grows and what are you developing there?
So there definitely are challenges with doing some gardening there. Now, traditionally they grew squash and corn and beans, and it would have been more along in the washes or in edges of the canyons, the wetter areas, and a lot of the infrastructure that they had, like where we live, it actually, there was a dam just outside of town, and they used to have water available for irrigation. And I don't know the exact date, but around 1970, maybe a little before or after, that dam broke and it's never been repaired.
Oh.
And so, a lot of the people my parents' age and a little bit younger, they remember all the farms. Younger people, they don't. Anyways, getting back to what they used to have. But so water is it is a necessity to grow a garden, and there is enough rain if you have a way to collect it. So that's one thing that's necessary. A lot of the soil now, right there in Kayenta, it's interesting because there's a layer of clay over top of the sand. Most of the reservation is sand, but it's like whether some flood went through there at some time, whether the big flood or not, I don't know, but washed in this 2 foot of clay over top. So there's actually nutrients in the soil there, but it's a bigger problem with just how heavy the soil is. But most places, they're going to have some soil amendments to be able to garden. And then, of course, the other thing is they're going to have some kind of fence, because you have the horses that run wild, the Mustangs that are all over the reservation, and other animals too, because it is free range. So there are some challenges with gardening.
Some real challenges, yeah.
And if you wanted to, say, grow tomatoes or peppers or whatever, where will you get your tomato and pepper plants?
I was wondering that very thing.
You're going to have to drive 100 miles. So one of the first things that James did when we moved to this mission site was build a greenhouse. And so we raise all the various bedding plants and sell them at a reduced rate, or if the case may be, give them to people, whatever the need requires, so that the plants are available right there. So if it's a day to plant, if it's a good time to plant, they don't have to drive, over 200 miles round trip to pick up the plants and come back. And we've had comments from people. I actually set up a little table, a little booth in the parking lot of the park. And a man said to me, "Where did these plants come from?" And I said, "They were grown right here on the reservation." And he said, "Oh, you have saved me a trip. You've saved me a lot of miles because I can just pick these up from you right now." So I think that there is an appreciation that we do have those plants available right there, and they've been grown right in their backyard.
Okay. What else are we doing in terms of outreach, in terms of insinuating ourselves into the local community? I'll add to that this. And again, I don't want anybody to think I'm speaking about the Navajo or Native Americans as curiosities. I don't mean that. There are some massive cultural differences. And I don't know how that works in terms of sharing the gospel, because you might have some things to work through that in another place, working with another group of people, you would not have to work through. So in terms of sharing Christ, I want you to share with me other ways that you've been going about that. But what's that cultural component been like? Everywhere you go, you're cross-cultural missionaries in your own country. And you must be mindful of not just superimposing your own mindset upon somebody else who has a very different cultural background. So what's the dynamic been like to work with people who may on some level, and may on some significant level, view the world through a very different lens? What have been the learnings along the way?
Well, I'll just start with saying the Navajo language has something like 5,000 words. That's it. And when you think of the English language, I mean, I don't even know how many words we have in our vocabulary. And so the understanding of how things are described with the fewer amount of words, with us having so many words, I think that influences some of the understanding of, say, Bible studies, or even just communication in general.
Yeah, it really affects, because language, that's how we express our thought. And the way we present thoughts in English with our subject first and then a verb and then the object, and they turn that around somewhat. The language, and even then, because of the way thought is expressed in Navajo, oftentimes when I say something, what I think I say very clearly, I'm watching their faces and I'm wondering, what did they really hear? You know what I'm saying? If it's people like my children's age and younger, we're communicating about the same.
Okay.
Because of the education system is all in English.
Yeah.
But when I get people my age and older, it's very questionable what they heard when I say something, because of the thought, behind it. So that's a challenge. It makes it interesting, presenting the gospel, what we do in church. And I don't do all the preaching there because of that. I do have a Navajo elder, and so he's doing some of the preaching in Navajo, and he'll do some back and forth. It's a native church, and so I try to keep it there.
I was going to ask a question along that line, and that would be, how many Navajo church workers or gospel workers are there? Do we have any, or few, or what?
There are a few. I don't have too many in my church, other than what you would say lay people in the church. Now, my church is a native church,
Do you have Navajo pastors, Native American pastors, a Navajo or otherwise that you know of?
I have an elder in my church that I would consider a lay pastor. Yeah, and I think there's some
But not paid.
in other places.
Maybe we have some Bible workers over in closer to the capital of the Navajo Nation. We have a couple Navajo Bible workers. Yeah.
And a pastor too, I think, or church worker. There are some others in other places.
It doesn't sound like
Not many.
we're wallowing in
No.
Native church workers.
No.
No.
That is a great need that we would like to see more mentorship to raise up more Native workers.
And along with that, so it's not just the language, there is the cultural thing. And,
Yeah, talk to me about
there's the traditional thing. And so, there's maybe a good portion of the population that is very open to Christianity, and then there's a portion that really leans heavily towards the traditional side of things.
And what is that traditional side of things? What does that look like?
More of worshiping everything, rocks, streams, mountains,
As far as religion, we'd probably call it a deistic religion where God is in this and in that.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer takes a different form where we teach very definite prayer is communication with God, where they're speaking to the rock or the tree or the wind to get the strength of those different items. So their view of prayer traditionally is different.
Speak to the rock, the wind, and so forth, and absorb, receive the strength that's in that is in those various things. Oh, I see. Sure.
That's me trying to explain it. But I think people that study that would call it more of a deistic kind of approach. But anyways, the traditionally, those that lean more traditional with all their native traditions, less open to Christianity and some different ideas. But, people like that, they're still very open to other things. Like they're definitely opening to the gardening and some of that stuff. Anything that they see as helping their people, there's always an openness to it.
They do have medicine men, and they have medicine men that, put the curses on, people, and then a medicine man maybe that would pray to take away the curse when that happens and those kind of things. And so when we get back to that hopelessness, there's also fear too, because, if I do this, which is against, a tradition or whatever, then will I get a curse come back on me, or will this person curse me? So there is a lot of fear as well from those beliefs.
Okay, let's talk about sharing the gospel with people who live on the reservation. You've said there's an openness. How do you find? Exploit is the wrong word, but it's the right word at the same time. How do you exploit that openness? How do you share Christ with somebody on the reservation in a way where it might be different to somebody who lived in Oklahoma City, for example?
Since I've moved to Kayenta, I'm being a lot more careful than I was when I was in Page. For instance, in Page, I went there, my background was doing Bible studies. The idea, we go out, we do Bible studies to bring people into our church. I'm a little more careful about that now.
Why is that?
Well, because traditionally the medicine men came to their houses and did their ceremonies, so I found in many cases I was like a Christian medicine man to them.
Interesting.
So doing Bible studies at their house didn't bring them to church. They may have been perfectly happy with what I was doing and happy for me to keep coming. There's a lot of things with that I probably don't want to talk about, but Now I'm doing Bible studies with people that are already connected to the church in some way. I've seen them at church. Maybe they're family members, So just being a little more careful that way. And my outreach is probably more practical. However, so one thing we could talk about, the flea market is a big thing.
No, tell me about
You
that.
wonder, what do people do? Well, flea market, they do it every week. And it's just amazing. It's a big thing in the culture there. And there's people that they'll go to the flea market in Kayenta, and then they'll go to the one over in Chinle, an hour away. And you know what I'm saying? And they're on different days of the week.
It's a social.
And it's a market
big
day.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
Just
And-
like in other countries, the open air markets.
It really is.
And they love it.
Food is a big part of it. So you have all the vendors selling food. And, it's good for them because some of their people are the vendors, and there's people that come in from, off the reservation too, taking advantage, of this situation, at least in a business way, what you would consider would be normal. But that's something that we do too. We show up on market day, try to have some volunteers from the church there, and we'll put out literature. And it's surprising how much of that literature people will take. It disappears, and we have all kinds of literature that we set out there.
We have steps
and
to
I'll
Christ.
even take Bibles and have Bibles sitting there and give out Bibles. And
in the Navajo language.
we do have the one book, Steps to Christ, that's been translated. So one page would be English, one page would be in Navajo. And so that one we'll have out for them. And then just other things like Signs of the Times and different tracts. And so people are open to that. And it's a good way we can meet people out there. And
So we do sell our plants at the flea market as well as produce throughout, the growing season. We'll, have different produce, and we pretty much sell out of the produce because
Quite often, yeah.
it's fresh. It hasn't been trucked in from a long way and set in the grocery store, so they really do appreciate that fresh produce. And we also do have chickens to help fertilize the garden, and so we take eggs as well to the flea market.
So you've had to get creative in the way that you reach out to people. It seems that what's driving you is looking for ways to get into the midst of people and to get to know people up close. Is that what I'm hearing?
Definitely. Relationships, I would say. Relationships are just very important, especially in a culture that values relationships so highly. And food. We had, at Thanksgiving, we had a community Thanksgiving meal, and we had, our church was packed. There was, I don't even know if there would have been extra seats for more people. And then we had a Thanksgiving meal after that service. So that was really exciting and a really fun day.
Now, you've been here a little while. When you arrived to work on the reservation, was it what you expected, or was it like you'd gone to a whole new planet? How much was it like what you anticipated versus how different it was?
Well, one of the things that struck me immediately, it still makes me laugh when I think about it. I'm used to hugging people. And so I'm thinking, well, the new pastor's wife, and, greet these people with little ladies with a hug or something like that. And I remember the first day that we were in church, and I remember hugging a little lady, and she pulled back, and she stuck out her hand, and she said to me, "We Navajos, we shake hands." And I said, okay, lesson learned, first day here. And so that is, and we do shake hands as well, but they have a very distinctive handshake as their greeting. So that just came to my mind as one of my first memories coming.
Because that's what's going to happen, right? You enter into another culture. whether you're sharing Christ on the Navajo Nation or in Egypt or in Switzerland.
Right.
Cultures are different, and a person needs to be thinking about how they'll be perceived and what works in that culture and that language. When it comes to sharing Jesus, one size fits all in as much as Jesus fits all, but after that, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to sharing, witnessing, even serving. And you've no doubt found that.
And I would say, too, that through the years from back more than 100 years ago, I think that they have become accustomed to people coming and going.
Yes.
In a negative way and a positive way. White people did really take advantage many times, and then also people would come and, because of maybe the harsh living conditions, stay a short period of time. And that has been something else that from at the beginning I didn't understand. People would come to church and they would say, "Oh, you're still here?" Mm-hmm. And to me, I took that, I was in a way offended, not really offended, but, thinking, oh, they don't want me here, and, oh, you're still here, that way. However, it was more you're still here, you've stayed, because relationships are important, so the change is very difficult on them. These missions, they're not just a church like we have in regular parts of America. This is what you call a mission site. So you have what you might kind of call a compound. It's usually fenced in and at least 2 acres, 2.5 acres. So you have building maintenance, you have cleaning, you have, ministries that you're running, like the garden, and that falls on the pastor to do most all of those things. So people being willing to say, I want to come and kind of like the Bible story, hold up the hands of Moses so that, I'll come and I'll pull weeds for you. We had 11 children in this mission group, and among the 11 children, I think they pulled over 100 5-gallon buckets of weeds for us.
Oh.
But that translated into hours of my time.
That's right.
That that freed me up for other responsibilities that I had.
That's right. So a couple of things that come to mind here. Even though the church only has 2.5 full-time gospel workers in there, perhaps what this means is that others who think we should be more serious about it or would like to see bigger work might like to actually be part of the solution themselves, and you welcome that kind of help.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And by the way, the last thing in the world we need you doing is pulling weeds. I know you're of the mindset, if it's got to be done, it's got to be done, and I'm here, so I'll do it, sure. But there's so much more that you could do. If someone could say, let me do the weeds, you've got to paint the side of that building, let me take care of that.
Exactly.
We need to fix the countertops in the kitchen area, we'll take care of that. That would free you up to do the Bible studies and the agriculture and to mingle among people as those who desire their good.
Exactly.
So there's room for people to help.
Oh, definitely. And it doesn't require, expensive plane tickets to go to another country.
Right.
And there's so much beauty around.
Right. Who doesn't want to go to Monument Valley?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It should be a pretty easy sell for you.
Exactly. And Arches and
How far away
Bryce,
is Arches?
2.5, 3 hours.
Oh, and Bryce Canyon is not much further away.
Right. 3 hours.
Wow.
I 4 hours.
I got to figure out when to get down there. Fantastic. So people who want to go, they'll see a magnificent part of the country. They'll be part of an essential work and a unique work.
Yes.
Okay, so they want to get in touch with you to find out how to do that. How do we get in touch with you to say, well, maybe we can come and help? How do people figure that out?
Email.
Okay.
Call.
Yeah. What's the email address?
So the email is ncrosby
Oh, yeah.
at nevadautah.org.
Easy. N for Nancy, N Crosby
Yes.
at nevadautah.com.
.org.
Oh, .org. Okay,
Yes.
well, that's right. Well, we've got it on the screen as well, and the fact that we made a mistake will make people think twice about this.
Exactly, because I have actually given .com because it's so
Yeah, that's
common.
what you
So,
do.
but it's .org.
Okay, N Crosby at NavadaUtah.org. And people can reach out and say, we'd love to come down there and help you if we can. People are helpful, you know.
Yes.
There are a lot of really helpful people who would just love to do something like this in a unique sort of environment. It's a part of the country and it's a part of the world most of us never get near. And it's a slice of America that many people don't even know exist.
Yes, and we always give our volunteers a meal of Navajo tacos, and they love it.
Navajo tacos?
Yes.
Tell me more.
So there is a traditional fry bread that the Navajos make, and then beans, lettuce, tomato.
Yeah. Okay, so it's an under-resourced part of the country. There's little in the way of infrastructure. And we could be critical about that if we wanted to, or we could acknowledge that it's a different landscape. So maybe there's a bit of room for understanding as well. As gospel workers, if you were to say, these are my needs, my present needs, first I'm going to ask you that, then I'm going to ask you what you'd like to see taking place in terms of mission and ministry. That maybe is not happening now. What are your needs as gospel workers?
Okay. Some of the things, so like we just had a mission group that did this VBS, and like Nancy said, that's something that's very difficult for us, just the two of us, to put out a program like that.
2 against 37.
Yeah, when a group can come in and do a program for children like that, that's a huge blessing, and it really helps, meeting the community and making connections in the community. Similar to that is like educational programs. We've had a number of people asking for whether it be like cooking classes, natural remedy classes. I mean, I've had requests for these things, and we've done some of these things ourselves in the past, but it seems like we're doing so much that it's hard to, so that's something I think also groups could do.
I would say prayer. We need prayer because we need wisdom from above to reach people, but also just it's a lonely place.
Yeah.
It's a lonely place when you think about, how far it is to other amenities and grandchildren and children. So, just prayer that God gives us strength and health and wisdom and guidance in our work. Yeah. To me, I know that prayer, so even if there's someone who might be listening to us that says, I'm in a wheelchair. I had a lady call me and she said, I'm in bed most of the time. I was a nurse, but I was in a serious car accident and I can no longer work. And she says, I don't have a lot of money, but she said, know that I'm praying for you. Mm. And we, John, we never know what that lady's prayers have prevented. Correct. The dangers, the safety for us. And so prayer is so important.
And the hearts that have been impressed or are being impressed right now, and will one day, that person where the prayers have been directed is going to respond to an invitation, respond to studying the Bible. Yeah.
And someone that and she just gave me the opportunity. She said, if there's something you need prayer for, text me. And to me, that really meant a lot to me, that I know if there's a problem that I can text this woman. I've never met her. I don't know what she looks like, nothing. But I can text her, and she sent me some encouraging cards to both of us. And so that really meant a lot, means a lot.
Let me broaden this for a second. You're on the Navajo Nation, and that's right where it is. But you, Nancy, are the coordinator of Native American ministries in the territory we know as the Pacific Union.
Yes.
So what's happening further afield? What's encouraging you? Where are the bright spots, and maybe what are some of the challenges?
So the challenge, our biggest challenge, is within the Navajo Nation because of its size that we already discussed. We do have recently an organization called Adventist World Radio has helped sponsor a new radio station for the Navajo people.
Fantastic.
And so there is some Navajo programming and English programming, and they hope to reach as much on the air as possible with that radio. So that is a bright spot. Some of the other Native American tribes within this territory of the Pacific Union are very close to large cities, large churches. In California, they have, I think, 900 different Native American tribes, but they're very close to big cities or,
Sure.
Churches. So it's not as a dire need as we have in this huge area where it takes a long time to get to these people, and some people live so remote that to go have Bible studies at their house is maybe an hour drive or 40-minute drive.
I see. So that is the big challenge. And by the way, if I understand this correctly, some people don't have addresses.
That's right.
Yeah, is it
That's
some?
right.
Many? What is that?
Well, they may have a P.O. box.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my membership list, no phone numbers, no physical address.
No physical address.
No,
So how do you
there's no
find
physical
somebody?
addresses.
If someone fills out a card, let's say they'll fill out a card, say, I'd like to study the Bible. What are they writing down for address?
Well, when we were doing the surveys, and this was back in Page before I moved to Kayenta, they could draw a map. Usually I tried to be there because many of them I couldn't find. So usually I would try to be there, and if I saw them check that, I would talk to them right then and get the directions.
say, how do I get to your
Because
place?
I knew I may never get them on the phone.
And what are they saying? Get to the end of the road, take a right, see the yellow truck, take a left. It's
Yeah,
that sort of thing?
It really is. Look,
Wow, people are drawing a map
the
for
tree,
you.
Yes, a tree.
the windmill. Yeah.
That's
It's-
unique.
It's a descriptive language, and so that their mindset when they're given directions is descriptive. And yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Describe, this is late in this conversation, we'll be asking you this. Describe the average Navajo. And again, I say this with respect. I don't want to make these sons and daughters of God curiosities, but if you ask me to describe the average New Zealander where I'm from, I could do that. The average Tennessean, I could do that. What's the average Navajo person like? And I mean, what's their nature like, their outlook on life, their hopes and aspirations and so forth?
That's an interesting question. I think it's changing a lot. So
Oh.
if I take men my age and older, you're seeing people that rode horses. We'd call them cowboys, and they had their sheep or they had their cows. The cows were a big thing, 60s and 70s. After that, it started going down. Before that, sheep was kind of the traditional thing. So there's sheep herders traditionally, and horse riders. Horses is their big thing. Everyone rode a horse, and so
Very
my age and
quiet.
older, you're seeing that kind of person that's connected to their land and their herds, their flocks, their herds, and their animals. When we get to the younger generation, it's interesting. I don't know if I have a good way to describe it.
But as a whole, the Navajo are very quiet people, very observant.
They're artistic people. You kind of see that in their...
Pottery and weaving, beautiful rugs and baskets and pottery.
What happened to the cows and the sheep?
Not so many cows now. We have cows wandering past, but
Sure.
They had to really cut back on the grazing.
Because it is a desert.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough to feed and support the amount of sheep and cows that...
So now it's more the wild horses. There's a lot of wild horses. And a lot of people have sheep still.
I said a minute ago I would ask you, or maybe I did ask you, and I sidetracked us. In terms of ministry to the Navajo, and in the context you find yourself in, what would you like to see? Like if you could sit down and draw up the ideal ministry, and you had resources and people and opportunities and so forth, what's where are we looking to get to? What's the dream?
So, like for our mission site, what I would like to see there, it's kind of like a center of influence and education that kind of connects people with their roots more when it comes to gardening and stuff like that. And yet, of course, a very strong Christian influence as well. And I would like to see that more of a self-supporting. So I'm trying to work with local people to work there that are going to be able to continue that. I think mission, they tend to be, it's always us coming in.
Yeah.
There's always a need for that, and there's a place. I'm trying to use that sensibly, but at the same time, I'm trying to bring people in that can work and be part of this mission that are local people, so that it's our mission. It's not just the mission they're bringing to us, it's our mission.
Sure, I like that. You lit up when I asked what you'd like to see.
I would, my dream is that we have a literacy center, early education, and maybe eventually on some higher grades. But I think that if we can help read and educate the children, that we have a chance that we can raise up Navajo missionaries.
What's the literacy rate like? I didn't think to ask.
So I really don't have statistics to share.
Yeah, but you interact with people, you see. What do you see?
Yes, reading is a real challenge,
So there are some fundamental needs, things that in other parts of the country and the world, people just take for granted.
Yes.
But if you're able to really address those needs, you feel like that'd make a big impact for the gospel.
Yes, because when I was teaching at a local community college and I would do assessments on students coming in, I was finding that the average reading level was maybe between second and fourth grade. So being able to bring children in and, teach them young stories and crafts and some of those kind of things, and maybe move on to a preschool or kindergarten and some of those kind of things I see as a very helpful and exciting opportunity.
So after 11 years, it's still early days, and God is at work through you both, and you see wonderful things on the horizon.
Yes, with God, all things are possible.
Yeah, amen. Hey, thanks very much for being here. This has been a blessing for me. We wish you God's richest blessings, and thank you for the remarkable and very important work that you are doing. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. They are James and Nancy Crosby. I'm John Bradshaw, and this has been Our Conversation.